know? What? Strange things are afoot at the Circle K.
Bill and Ted, two excellent airhead dudes from the late 80s and early 90s who dream of one day starting their own band, Wild Stallions, where unbeknownst to them, in the future they do form their band, which becomes the greatest rock band of all time, in which the very fabric of peace and happiness being sustained in the future depends on Bill and Ted forming their band.
Not bad.
Played delightfully likeable by Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter, we have now seen Bill and Ted in two classic movies, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, where we have seen the likeable duo travel in time, meeting some of the most influential figures in history, and travel into the afterlife, and even fall into the terrifying pits of hell, where they must return to the world of the living in order to stop evil robot versions of themselves. Yeah, this film series might just be the most random film series ever. I mean, in what other movie series are you likely to see Abraham Lincoln yell out "Party on, dudes"? Party on, dudes! Along with the Grim Reaper dressed up as... whatever he's dressed up as here. No matter how dim-witted or absent-minded Bill and Ted might be, their lovability and kind nature always shines through, and watching them go on their wacky adventures never gets old or tiring. And there is just something so alluring about the idea of these two guys, who seem like idiotic buffoons, who go on to do great things and save the world in the future. So join with me today as we look at 10 things that you may not know about this comedy duo double act, as we explore 10 things that you may not know about Bill and Ted, two of the most bodacious movie characters ever. So, let's check it out. 69, dude!
Put them in the Iron Maiden.
Iron Maiden? Excellent!
Execute them.
Bogus.
Number 10. Bill and Ted and Bob? Bill and Ted are a profound double act in the realm of pop culture, celebrated and adored by fans who just can't get enough of the two unlikely heroes. However, this funny double act was originally a triple act, with a third member of the Bill and Ted crew, called Bob.
No way!
You see, this goes back to 1983, where UCLA students Ed Solomon and Chris Matheson created Bill and Ted for improv classes. It was a comedy act about two morons who didn't know anything about history, trying to, well, talk about history.
Excuse me, when did the Mongols rule China?
I don't know, I just work here.
And of course the character Bob was a part of this sketch. Ed Solomon and Chris Matheson played Bill and Ted, but the third actor who played Bob just really wasn't into the whole thing as much as Solomon and Matheson, so he left the act, and thus Bob was gone. And from then on, just Bill and Ted were the main focus. Thank God too, because Bill and Ted's and Bob's Excellent Adventure just doesn't sound right. Also, co-creator Chris Matheson is the son of acclaimed author Richard Matheson, who wrote many episodes of The Twilight Zone, and the movie script for Somewhere in Time, along with novels such as I Am Legend and What Dreams May Come. And Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon played the Piggy Wiggy Ziggy Zig guys in the ice cream diner.
Eat the big Ziggy 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 Zig.
And they also played two seance participants in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. Number 9. The Time Machine was originally not a phone booth. So often in the Bill and Ted movies, we see Bill and Ted travelling through time via a phone booth from the future, making a somewhat unique way of travelling within the boundaries of time. However, in the early days of the creation of Bill and Ted, the unlikely heroes had different means of time travel. A van, namely a 1969 Chevy van. But when Warner Brothers got involved with the production of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, they were against the idea as they found a time-travelling car to be too similar to Back to the Future, so they changed it to a phone booth instead. Number 8. Pauly Shore auditioned for Ted. When it comes to Bill and Ted, it's damn near impossible to imagine anyone else in the roles but Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter, and their charm and likability is totally what sells the Bill and Ted brand. However, when the casting process took place for Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, Pauly Shore auditioned for the part of Ted, but subsequently didn't get the role.
We auditioned for Buddy.
Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, man. In the fire.
And who didn't get the role?
Pauly Shore.
Speaking of Pauly Shore and his weird mannerisms, for a long time it was popular belief that the Pauly Shore comedy Biodome was originally a failed Bill and Ted sequel, the third entry in the saga, but evolved into its own movie starring, as mentioned, Pauly Shore along with Stephen Baldwin, as two 90s airhead dudes whom are just like Bill and Ted, only without the likability making them more annoying, where they get stuck in a big biodome enclosure. Well, this theory has been debunked by Alex Winter, who denied any knowledge of this originally being a Bill and Ted movie. It makes sense when you think about it, because who on earth would want to see Bill and Ted in a giant biodome? Number 7. It took 2 years to get the first movie released. Originally, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure was filmed and produced in 1987 under the Dino De Laurentiis Entertainment Group. However, just before the movie could be released, the Dino De Laurentiis Entertainment Group went bankrupt and was shut down, putting the movie's release on indefinite hiatus. At one stage, it was even considered just releasing Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure as a cable movie on TV, which I think would have been sad, as the movie did have cinematic quality about it, worthy of being screened in cinemas. So finally in 1989, Orion Pictures, whom had just previously released RoboCop, saved the day and bought Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. And finally the movie was released.
Excellent!
The fact that 2 years had passed between the movie's production and release probably explains why Keanu Reeves is wearing this horrible wig in some of the promotional photos, which honestly look nothing like his hair seen in the movie. Number 6. There were 2 animated series. No one ever talks about the Bill and Ted animated series these days, and when they do mention it, people tend to talk down on the shows, to which I have to reply, are you kidding me? These shows are awesome and perfectly recapture the spirit, energy and feel of the movies. And yeah, it is a little strange that 2 different versions were created, but nevertheless, the first series was produced by Hanna-Barbera, and even featured the voices of Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter.
Wild Stallions rule!
And this version definitely had the better animation of the 2 shows. But the plot was very basic in that it just followed Bill and Ted on time-travelling adventures, as you would expect. However, you get to the second series, and that is where things get really interesting. The second series was produced by Deke, whom had previously produced the real Ghostbusters. Released in 1991, as mentioned, the animation was something of a downgrade, and it didn't use the original actors' voices anymore. However, what the Deke series did offer was an irresistible premise, that Bill and Ted's phone booth can now literally travel into movies, TV shows, books, and video games. That's right, the phone booth can now literally go anywhere, which to me is just an amazing premise of which you could do literally anything with, and just made the show so much fun. An episode that stands out to me is called Leave It to Bill and Ted, where Bill and Ted travel into a 1950s sitcom that pays homage to Leave It to Beaver. And when Bill and Ted are in the show, everything is black and white. And when Bill and Ted start interfering with the dynamics of the show, some of the characters even go violent and start destroying property, namely Bill and Ted's phone box.
Yeah! Bogus!
Hang on a sec. Hang on. Stop. A show where two teens from the 90s enter a 1950s black and white TV show, of which the arrival causes character of said TV show to become destructive. This sounds familiar. Now, where have I heard this story before? Yeah, that's right. This is Pleasantville. 8 years before Pleasantville was even made. So, did Pleasantville rip off the Bill and Ted animated series? Sadly, this show never caught on, throwing it into obscurity. But it's definitely worth a look if you're a massive Bill and Ted's fan. The only reason the show went from Hanna-Barbera to Dick is because the Dick version was being aired by Fox Kids. And Fox Kids wanted to produce an animated series, on the account that it was showing a live-action series of Bill and Ted. Which leads me to my next point. Number 5, there was a live-action TV show. Ah yes, the early 90s was indeed the heyday for Bill and Ted. Thanks to Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey now being released, it seemed that Bill and Ted were becoming quite the franchise. But the question is, how does Bill and Ted hold up on prime time on the small screen? Well, the answer is not very well, as we get Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures, which of course uses lookalikes in the role of Bill and Ted, instantly making the show obnoxious and unlikable, and thus the show never caught on. The whole time watching this show, you have these two buffoons jumping around claiming to be Bill and Ted, while you're always thinking in the back of your mind, no, sorry, you're not my Bill and Ted.
I'm Bill S. Preston Esquire.
I am Ted Theodore Logan.
And together, we are Wild Stallions!
The humour and storylines were weird, an episode of which I reviewed a year ago, where the writer of the show was obsessed with Chicken Kievs, and thus the episode was full of Chicken Kiev jokes.
Just that it had much too much to do with Chicken Kiev. Ruthless.
Because you think Bill and Ted and you think Chicken Kievs, right? What? The show also looks like it borrows sets off the TARDIS from the original Doctor Who series, which is really weird. And, well, yeah, this show never caught on, and has become even more obscure in the sands of pop culture than the animated series is. Number 4, the NES game and other merchandise. So while we're at it, we may as well talk about the other outlets that Bill and Ted had to offer fans who just needed their Bill and Ted fix. Well, there was the infamous Nintendo game, Bill and Ted's Excellent Video Game Adventure, where Bill and Ted must travel through time to collect famous historical figures whom had been kidnapped by space-time rebels and dumped in incorrect time streams. So Bill and Ted must return each historical figure to their own time stream. But you have a time limit, as you have to perform a special Wild Stallions concert, which is the concert that will put Bill and Ted on the map. The game came out shortly before Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, and I can't help but wonder if the game oddly inspired the second movie's plot. On the account, it revolves around time rebels, and Bill and Ted's main goal is performing their groundbreaking Wild Stallions concert. Then there's the Marvel-released Bill and Ted comic book adventures. This time you can clearly see they have taken inspiration from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey for the artwork. Speaking of which, the art in this comic lineup is very interesting. Like this pic of some midget skeleton with a chainsaw, and this one with these deranged bloodthirsty emojis, and this one where, well, to be honest, I don't even know what the hell is going on here. Yeah, because apparently Bill and Ted comics come from a terrifying, nightmarish realm. And then of course there's the figurines, and I swear I don't know anyone who had any of these figures. Nope, not one person. Which is a shame, as I mentioned with the Beetlejuice figurine lineup, of which both were released by Kenner, the lineup actually isn't that bad and is actually pretty interesting. And I would have thought that in the early 90s, kids would have loved to have had their own Bill and Ted figurines, so they can indeed create their own Bill and Ted adventures. Number 3, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey originally had a different title. Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey is definitely a unique sequel, in that it tries something completely different. It would have been easy to have Bill and Ted on another time-travelling adventure, but this one decided to be more surreal and nightmarish, and to tell a story about Bill and Ted stuck in the afterlife. And in my opinion, the first one is a better movie, but the second one is a funnier movie, as the delivery of humour in Bogus Journey is just done so with perfection, and the fact that it took a different direction made the franchise still feel interesting and fresh, although the movie was originally called Bill and Ted Go to Hell. Yep, this particular title takes no prisoners, and just jumps right in there, and lets you know exactly what you're in for. However, it was decided to change the title, as it was thought that the edgy title may offend and put off Christian viewers.
And I guess that's that.
Ironically, just a few years ago, there was a Bill and Ted comic book special called Bill and Ted Go to Hell, which is kind of like a mishmash of both the movies, in which Napoleon becomes the evil emperor of heaven. Yeah, it's pretty epic. Number 2, Bill and Ted were originally unpopular nerds. There is no doubt about it, Bill and Ted are two pretty cool guys. Thanks to their stylish taste of late 80s and early 90s fashion and love for Eddie Van Halen, it's hard to imagine not getting along with these guys. However though, that was not the original vision of the characters. Originally they were supposed to be social outcasts, the skinny nerdy kids that the cooler kids picked on and bullied. Something that changed with the arrival of Reeves and Winter, as the two young actors were pretty cool guys, and definitely weren't nerdy, or guys that looked like they would be bullied.
Excellent!
So instead, in the movie, we mainly see Bill and Ted interact with themselves, rather than engaging with their peers in their surrounding environment. So Bill and Ted are still in their own little two-man friendship, but without explaining them to be nerds, as trying to pull these guys off as nerds would have been impossible. Number 1. Keanu wanted to be Bill, and Alex wanted to be Ted. As mentioned, it's hard to imagine anyone else but Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter in the role of Bill and Ted. But what if Reeves and Winters were casted, but had their roles switched? Well, this may sound like some kind of crazy sick joke, but indeed, when the two young actors originally read for the roles, Winter auditioned for Ted, and Reeves auditioned for Bill, which would have been something else, I tell you. I mean, I can't even comprehend what on earth that would have been like. But yeah, thankfully when creators Ed Solomon and Chris Matheson saw the audition, they felt that Reeves and Winter had good chemistry and were perfect in the movie, but decided to do a switcheroony on their roles, and a good call too. Well guys, that was my most bodacious look into Bill and Ted. Without a doubt, some of the most likeable and celebrated characters in pop culture. These days, people keep speaking of a third movie, and there's been lots of talk as to whether it's actually going to happen or not. I don't really know how I feel about this. I kind of feel split about it, and can't help but feel like modern Hollywood would only screw it up. But then I think it'll be magical just to see Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter on screen together again as Bill and Ted. And the fact that they are now middle-aged might actually be quite funny. But until the third entry does, or doesn't happen, we still have the first two classic entries there to forever enjoy. Anyway, I'm Minty, and Station!